Your mind is not just a tool. It's not just where you think, remember, or plan. It's a gateway, a living portal that tunes reality like a receiver. But the question no one asks is, what frequency is it tuned to? Most people assume they're grounded in reality, one shared objective world seen through different eyes. But the truth is far stranger. The world you see is shaped more by the state of your mind than by external fact. And what your mind is tuned to determines not only how you perceive reality, but what kind of reality begins to mirror back to you. Think about it. Two people can walk into the same room. One feels threatened, the other inspired. One sees opportunity, the other sees competition. Same environment, different realm. Because perception is not passive, it's generative. You are not just seeing the world, you are creating a version of it. And the source of that creation? The mind's frequency, its tuning. But most people never touch the dial. Because here's the trap. Your mental frequency isn't set consciously. It's shaped by your trauma, your upbringing, the media you consume, the emotions you rehearse daily. You think you're thinking freely, but you're echoing input you didn't even realize entered the system. And the mind, being a portal, doesn't just affect you. It opens into realms, not metaphorical ones. Energetic, emotional, psychological landscapes that magnetize experience to match your state. When you live in anxiety, your mind tunes to a realm where threats feel close. Even where none exist, you feel them, you dream them, you attract echoes of them. When you dwell in anger, you connect to a current of energy that feeds off confrontation. When you hold gratitude or presence, truly hold it. Your mind links into a completely different bandwidth, and the longer you stay in that state, the more that realm becomes your reality. This is not law of attraction fluff. This is frequency resonance. This is neurology. This is consciousness science dressed in ancient clothing. The mind is a bridge, but what it bridges to depends entirely on the signal you carry, and if you don't become aware of that signal, someone or something else will tune it for you. Most people are walking through life unaware that their mind is not just receiving information, it's acting as a transmitter. Every thought you hold, every emotion you cycle through, every belief you cling to, sends a signal outward, and signals don't just vanish, they resonate. That resonance is what tunes you to certain realms, fields of experience, emotion, perception. Some people live their entire lives within a realm of limitation. They don't just think small, they feel confined, like there's an invisible ceiling they can't rise above. But that ceiling isn't in the world, it's in the tuning of their consciousness. You felt this without knowing it. When you're in a low mental state, everything you see confirms it. A friend's silence feels like rejection. A missed message feels like proof of unworthiness. Even beauty becomes hard to recognize. Why? Because the mind is filtering reality through the frequency it's tuned to. And here's where it gets deeper. Thoughts aren't isolated, they cluster, they harmonize. A single negative thought rarely stays alone. It attracts similar thoughts, similar emotions, even similar people. You begin to live inside an echo chamber created not by the world, but by your own tuning. But here's the terrifying and liberating truth. You can change the dial, not instantly, not through force, but through observation, presence, and practice. The mind, like a portal, responds not to noise, but to clarity. The clearer your inner signal, the more precisely you can shift its frequency. So how do you begin? First, stop numbing the portal. Distraction is the #1 enemy of conscious tuning. Every scroll, every unconscious binge, every reactive argument scatters your signal. You're no longer broadcasting anything coherent, you're just receiving noise. And when you receive noise long enough, you forget what silence even felt like. Second, get still. Stillness isn't about doing nothing, it's about becoming a conscious witness to your own signal. Notice your thought loops, notice the emotions that follow. Ask, what realm does this version of me live in? Is it a realm of fear, a realm of blame, a realm of lack? Because once you name it, you can shift it. And this is what the ancients were pointing to all along. From hermeticism to Eastern mysticism, from indigenous wisdom to modern psychology, they all knew the world outside you is a mirror, but the one holding the mirror is your mind. Once you begin to observe your inner frequency, without judgment, without flinching, something extraordinary happens. The illusion of a fixed self starts to dissolve. You realize your thoughts aren't you, they're just signals you've been tuned into, and most of them didn't originate from you at all. They came from your environment, from past wounds, from media, parents, lovers, systems. The mind absorbed them because that's what it does. It's not a wall, it's a membrane. It lets energy in. It shapes identity out of what it absorbs. But that identity isn't final, it's fluid, and that's where the power lies. Because if your mind is a portal, then what passes through it can be consciously chosen. The question is, are you choosing? Most people aren't. They're reliving, rebroadcasting, recycling. Waking up doesn't mean you become someone new. It means you watch the signal, you interrupt the patterns, and you retune the portal. Let's make this practical. Every realm of mind has a corresponding emotion. Fear locks you into survival mode. Gratitude opens access to creative flow. Presence drops you into deep perception. Shame collapses your field. Forgiveness clears it. So if you want to know what realm you're tuned to, don't just listen to your thoughts, feel your field. What emotional climate are you carrying into the world? Because the world is responding, not to your words, not to your appearance, but to your frequency. And that frequency determines what shows up in your life. The people you attract, the opportunities that appear, the conflicts that repeat, the visions that stay just out of reach. It's not luck, it's not fate, it's tuning. If you're still here, it's because some part of you already knows your signal is off. So don't scroll past this. Pause. Notice how your thoughts feel. Notice what kind of world they reflect. And ask yourself, is this the realm I want to live in? Or is it the one I've unconsciously inherited? Because the portal is active, always, but you decide what it opens to. There's a reason ancient traditions guarded this truth. They knew the mind wasn't just a container, it was a trans-dimensional key, one that could unlock divine insight, or madness, one that could raise your frequency into light, or spiral you into shadow. And the wild part? Both paths feel real, because the mind doesn't just interpret reality, it generates it. Ever wonder why a nightmare can feel just as real as waking life? Why a memory can flood your body with the same emotions years later as if it's happening now? Because to the subconscious, it is. That's what makes the mind a portal. It bypasses time, it bypasses space. It plugs you into experiences that exist beyond the physical, emotional, energetic, symbolic realms that shape your perception before you even open your eyes. But here's what most people never do. They never learn how to guard that portal. They leave it wide open to advertising, to media hysteria, to everyone's projections, to trauma loops disguised as relationships. And over time, they forget the mind was ever theirs to direct. They become tuned to chaos, tuned to lack, tuned to outrage, tuned to noise. And that signal feeds back into their lives like a glitching simulation. Everything starts to feel off, disconnected, untrustworthy, and they think it's the world that's broken, but often it's the portal, their mind, that's been left wide open to distortion. Here's the shift. You don't have to close your mind. You have to consciously filter what enters. You don't need to believe every thought. You need to witness it. You don't need to react to every emotion. You need to ask, what realm is this emotion tuning me toward? Because the moment you ask that question, you're no longer just inside the realm. You're outside of it, observing it, and that is where sovereignty begins. So how do you retune the mind? Not with affirmations shouted over doubt, not by pretending you're high vibe while carrying suppressed rage. You shift realms by shifting presence. by becoming aware of the exact moment your frequency dips and choosing not to follow it blindly. It begins with awareness. That sounds simple, but it's not, because awareness demands you stay awake, not just when meditating, but in the middle of your hardest triggers. It means noticing when you're spiraling before the spiral owns you. It means catching the thought that says you always mess things up and asking, whose voice is that really? Each time you ask, without judgment, you create space, and that space is power. Why? Because the mind can't stay tuned to a realm you no longer feed. When you stop recycling shame, scarcity, and victimhood, the portal naturally begins to shift. You start to feel the difference between the voice of intuition and the voice of fear. You begin to see how thoughts arise from somewhere like signals broadcast into your field, and you realize you don't have to claim every thought as truth. You don't have to believe everything you think. Your thoughts are invitations, not commands, and your emotional reactions, they're indicators, not authorities. Once you know this, you start to tune the mind like an instrument. You feed it stillness, you filter what enters, you cultivate elevated emotional states, not just to feel better, but to create a coherent field, because the mind's frequency responds to pattern and emotion, not theory, not intellect, but energy. And you, whether you know it or not, are already broadcasting. So the question isn't whether your mind is a portal, it's what realm are you opening every day without realizing it, and how much longer are you willing to leave that gate unguarded? By now you can feel it. The portal was never just a metaphor, it was always real. You've walked through it 1,000 times without noticing, in moments of deep peace, in spirals of despair, in dreams that felt more vivid than waking life. Your mind took you there, not your body, not a plane. Your consciousness. The truth is, you've been traveling realms your whole life, but you've been taught to ignore the signs, to dismiss your own inner knowing as imagination, to label your higher perceptions as overthinking, to normalize chaos as just life. But it's not just life. It's the realm your mind is dialed into. And if you're watching this, something inside you already knows. You're not here to keep tuning into the noise. You're here to retune the signal. That starts with ownership, not of the world outside, but of your inner field, of your thoughts, your attention, your reactions, because those aren't just mental events, they're coordinates. They place you somewhere, and that somewhere becomes your experience. So if you want to change your life, don't start with the outside. Start with the realm you're tuned to, the channel you're unconsciously broadcasting, the frequency you're emitting when no one's watching. And then, stay there. Don't just visit alignment when it's convenient. Live there, breathe there, speak from there, think from there, because the portal is always open. The only question is whether you're using it or it's using you. And if you've made it this far, it means the old frequency is already breaking. You're not who you were when you clicked play. That version of you, the one lost in the static, has already started to dissolve. Now it's your move. Stay, grow this signal, retune the portal, and keep walking deeper into the reality that was waiting for your awareness all along. This isn't the end of a video. It's the beginning of a new realm, and we'll keep opening the door together.